Today marks just about 8 months that we've been living in a global pandemic. And if you're anything like me, I'm sure you've been wanting to go on a great holiday escape. So today we're going to go on a little escapade. Let's explore what it's like to travel to the Maldives at this time. We are speaking with Visha Mahir, Executive Director of Universal Resorts in the Maldives. All right, joining us straight from sunny Maldives is Visha Mahir, the Executive Director of Universal Resorts in the Maldives. Hello, Visha.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So, Visha, how has it been since the Maldives opened their borders back in July?
It's been a gradual progress. So obviously, July when we opened, we had very few flights at that time that were coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So over the last couple of months, we've seen a steady and positive increase in the number of flights that have come in.
Yeah.
And obviously, along with that, we've seen an increase in the number of guests that have come in as well. So I think we've gone now from the border opening, we're around about 43,000 arrivals since the 15th of July.
Oh.
And we understood it would take its time. I mean, it's obviously not just dependent on our border opening, but it's also dependent on what's going on in each of these source markets as well. So I think it's been a positive start in that respect.
Yeah, and I heard that the UK just opened their travel corridor, right? Just a week ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and
they opened their travel corridor about 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
And has there been an influx of inquiries or bookings straight away? Is that how it happens?
Absolutely. I think definitely because British Airways had started to fly, I think it was on the 17th of October.
Mm-hmm.
So the travel corridor actually came after the BA flight started. And we definitely saw an increase in the number of inquiries that were coming in, as well as the bookings that were being realized. And I think even as of yesterday, the stats that were released, the UK was sitting at number 2 in terms of the arrivals into the destination. Yeah.
Can I ask what number 1 is? Is it Italy? I read.
No, it's actually Russia. Yes.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I understand about how there's so many factors. It's not just about the Maldives opening their borders, it's the respective countries as well. And with most of Europe going on second lockdown right now, so even if when you're open and they'll open, and then, but like even with the UK, they've opened the travel corridor, but then they're also in lockdown at the moment, right?
Yeah.
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 So,
I mean, those are challenges. I think what we've realized over the last couple of months is that it's very hard to predict what's going to happen. And things change so very quickly. It can be one way one week, and then again a decision is made that changes things for the next week. And the only thing that we can do at this point, I think, is just to be ready and adapt as and when we need to.
Yeah. And these bookings, are they for next year, a complete year from now, or how far away are they booking?
The bookings that we've had coming in, what was very interesting with the UK opening was that we, as soon as the travel corridor was announced, we had a number of bookings that had cancelled that wanted to rebook actually for November and December. They had initially, had bookings around those dates, but they had looked to push into 2021. But as soon as the corridor opened, they looked again at coming back earlier this year. So it's been a little bit of a mix. We have seen some pickup happen for the first quarter for sure. So January, February, and even a portion into March as well. So we've seen some inquiries coming in for that period.
Yeah, which is good actually for destinations like the Maldives, Bali, or any resort destinations, because everyone's been cooped up for almost a year now, and I think people are just sick and tired of big cities, because you can only travel within your vicinity, and everyone just wants an escape. So I can understand why people are really wanting to book that trip to the Maldives. So Visha, what are the current requirements for tourists to enter the Maldives? Do they need to quarantine themselves before?
At the moment, every tourist that arrives needs to arrive with a PCR test within 96 hours. So that is a requirement across There's no across every single source market basically. So they need to arrive regardless. I know that some of the airlines have different requirements. Some require a PCR test and some don't. But as a destination, we require for all tourist arrivals a PCR test, which is checked. And then I think what we have in the destination is that before the border opened, our tourism ministry released, together with our health protection authority, released a set of guidelines under which each resort has to operate. So all of the safety protocols that we have to have in place. So there's a very good basis that each resort currently has. And on top of that, then each resort obviously also has their own additional SOPs that they might have put into place as well.
Wow. Okay, so there's no need for guests to quarantine. Because in Australia, everyone who arrives right now has to quarantine themselves for 14 days in hotels before they can come out. So in the Maldives, the guests don't have to do that.
The national requirement is not like that. As I said, there may be some properties that have decided as an extra set precaution to do another test on arrival into the resorts as well. But as a destination, we don't require that. We just require the PCR test on arrival. Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. And I've also read somewhere that the current average stay of visitors, or at least what they're booking, has increased to 21 days or 3 weeks. How have the resorts adjusted to this?
I think, we have had, there are certain markets that have always traveled for a little bit longer. So I think, I don't think it's been very much of an adjustment. The resorts are quite geared to deal with long stay guests as well. So I think it's positive as well. But we've definitely seen that people that would have normally arrived to maybe, just under a week, our average length of stay has definitely gone up.
Has increased, nice. And I know sometimes what guests do, and I've done it myself, where I mix my stay in different resorts. Is that still doable at the moment, given all these guidelines?
There is a guideline under which you can do this. So you do have to apply for a permit in order to be able to do a split stay. It is possible, but as I said, you have to apply to get the permit in order for that to happen.
Okay, right. And I'm just wondering also, Visha, in terms of operations, are there any changes that the resorts have done since you have opened during this pandemic time? Like, for instance, I'm thinking, would there have been an increase in medical staff or the island doctors in the resort or something like that?
Again, it would vary from resort to resort. So or I can speak on behalf of Universal as to some of the things that we have done. We've obviously covered everything that is under the HPA guideline, which does require a medical professional to be on the resort, which is important at this point, especially in terms of having to take samples for testing and things like that as well. Yes. And in addition to that, obviously, our cleaning procedures have been enhanced. And then we've taken certain measures in some of the properties. So it could be, depending on the property, that we would perhaps keep a room unoccupied for 24 hours after a guest has checked out, in order for like a full deep clean to be, to be undertaken. So it goes without saying that social distancing in the restaurants is also has been implemented. But we're very, very lucky in the Maldives because most of our restaurants are outdoors anyway. Yes. So social distancing is actually quite easy on a resort in the Maldives. And other things like putting in some guidelines as to the number of people that could come into the gym at a time or into the spa at a time. But so we've looked at every sort of step of the guest journey and just try to introduce those protocols into those places without taking away completely from your holiday experience.
You know what I think, just being in the Maldives, you don't even have to, as you said, you don't need to be afraid to take out much of the holiday experience. Just being in any of your resorts actually is enough for the guests.
Yeah, that was interestingly one of the questions that came up a lot from our partners as well, because I think they understand that the safety precautions are a given, that we will be doing those anyway. So the other questions that we were actually getting from the guests were more around how how different would their holiday be? So their concern was, would there be a lot more restrictions in place that would maybe take away? But as I said, I think we're very fortunate in that the geography of our islands is actually, we're quite socially distanced anyway, so it's possible.
Yeah, and just for those who don't know, like in the Maldives, right? Every island is in their own. Every resort is in their own island, so social distancing is quite easy, and no masks are required in.
Masks are required. According to our regulation, masks are required in indoor spaces. But as I said, some of the resorts have actually, as an added precaution, staff will be wearing masks, if they're serving in the restaurants. And to the other point is that at the moment, every staff member that arrives, regardless of whether they're arriving from another resort, from another island in the Maldives or from abroad, every staff member has to undergo 14 days quarantine before and a PCR test before they are actually allowed to work. So there's very, very strict guidelines in place for the staff as well.
Good to know.
So, yeah.
All right. So last question, Visha. This year has really been interesting and challenging to most of us. Are there any lessons that you've learned, be it business-wise or just about life in general, that you've learned that this year has taught you? Share with us?
This year's taught us a lot. I mean, if I think work-wise, I think what it has taught us is, the lockdown for us in the Maldives happened very, very quickly. So it was literally from one day to the next that we were in a very strict lockdown. And I think what I realized is that we are able to adapt, and we're able to adapt very quickly when we need to. So, we've gone from thinking that we need to meet in person to be effective and to get work done, to being able to do Zoom meetings. We have GMs or our sales managers on islands across the Maldives. So we've struggled in the past to sometimes find a time where we can all come together, and we actually realize it can be quite effective just to be able to. I think it makes a difference to be able to see somebody. So I think, being able to have a call on Teams or on Zoom has been good. So I think we've learned to adapt.
But you can see that it can actually be done, like something like what we're doing right now.
Yes. And the same with our partners. I mean, obviously we missed WTM, this year. We missed ITB this year, but we've started to do the same regularly with our partners across the world as well. And I think that has made a difference, that it's kept that communication going, which has been really, really important.
Yeah, it's still important. I mean, this is the closest we can get. Nothing still beats face-to-face interaction. So
I agree.
At the moment. Yeah. And just as a last thing, Visha, can we just have a rundown of all the universal resorts so that everyone knows?
We have in the Maldives, we've got Kurumati, Maldives, we've got Kandolu, Kurumba, Velasaru, Baros, Milaidu, and Huafenfushi.
So that's 8 in total.
And Digali as well. Digali Maldives.
Which one's the latest addition to? Or
the last one within the group would have been Milaidu.
Okay, and the very first is Kurumba, right? Which is the very first resort in the Maldives.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Visha. It's really been wonderful to know what it's like to visit the Maldives right now, and thank you also for the lessons. For sharing with us the lessons that you've learned for this year.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.